It's one of the finest and most delicate pastries. It's extremely delicious both ways, sweet and savory. Today we'll be making the classic puff pastry and the inverse puff pastry. It's a pastry that requires a lot of patience, practice and methodology. At the end, we will obtain the most desired result, a pastry with the effect of 1,000 layers. This pastry takes 2 days to make. After that, should rest in the fridge at least 1 hour before and 1 hour after being rolled out. The recipes that we'll see today are designed to be made at home with products that we could get in the supermarket. These are not professional recipes that ask for 2 types of flour and a low humidity butter. Nor can we compare them with recipes from professional pastry chefs, since at home we don't have implements such as a sheeter. With these recipes and following each step, we will obtain at home a result with the same quality as a luxury pastry shop. At the end of the video, we'll see what we can do with the leftovers, how to present a wonderful Napoleon, and how to make the classic Palmiers. Let's make some puff pastry. For the classic puff pastry we need the dough hook. If we do it by hand, we will need a stainless steel or plastic scraper, a roller pin, a brush, 2 1/10 dough thickness rails, a 6.5 by 9 inches envelope made with parchment paper, 2 perforated trays, and a set of thin magnets. For the dough we need 500 grams of flour, 240 grams of warm water, 50 grams of melted butter, not hot, 10 grams of salt, and 1 tablespoon of white vinegar. We add everything in the bowl and proceed to knead slowly. You don't need to knead much. Simply knead until we obtain a compact dough. Make a ball and 2 cross cuts. Wrap and refrigerate. It's better if you make the dough the night before. It has to refrigerate at least for 1 hour. For the butter block we need a 6.5 by 9 inches envelope made with parchment paper and 370 grams of butter. With the help of the rolling pin, we spread the butter evenly. Once this step is ready, refrigerate until it gets solid. Remove both the dough and the butter block from the fridge. Roll out the dough until we get enough extension to cover the butter block. Both the dough and the butter block should have the same consistency. The butter block cannot be very solid because it would end up cracking, and can be very soft because it would end up coming out of between the edges. Wrap the butter block very well and seal. We proceed to make the first simple fold. Place enough flour on the surface. We will need less flour in the consecutive foldings. Tap gently to stretch. We must get the butter to spread evenly in the middle of the dough. This first fold is the key to getting a good puff pastry. If you see that the butter is cracking, stop the process for a moment and wait until it gets softer. On the contrary, if the butter begins to come out of between the edges, place the dough in the fridge until it gets firm. The first fold will be a simple one. Rectify the edges. Brush the excess of flour. Fold the upper third of the dough towards you. And then the last third up. Turn 90 degrees to get what it looks like a book. Wrap and refrigerate for at least 30 minutes. Let's make the second fold. The dough has to be cold but malleable. It cannot be hard because it will end up cracking. Roll out as much as you can. And always remove the excess of flour. Fold the first third towards you again, and the second up. Wrap and refrigerate. We make a third simple fold. We make a fourth simple fold. Now we proceed to the last fold. This will be a double one. We fold the dough in half. Then we fold each side to the middle. Then we fold both sides. And here we have the classic puff pastry, ready to be refrigerated and baked. It should rest for at least 1 hour. I prefer overnight. This dough lasts about 4 to 5 days in the fridge and 3 to 5 months in the freezer. We divide the dough in two. Here we can see some layers. We roll out one half. Roll out until getting a rectangle. Use the 1/10 dough thickness rails. This dough should rest for an hour in the fridge. I freeze it a little bit. We place a sheet of parchment paper and then the dough. I use these magnets as thickness control. For this dough, I use 2 or up to 3 magnets. I like the way the puff pastry looks wide and with the layers very visible. We place another sheet of parchment paper, another perforated tray on top, and finally we add some weight because this dough tends to rise a lot. You can place a Pyrex bowl with some beans. We bake at 380 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes or until it gets golden brown. It should be brown, otherwise it will be white or even raw in the center. We remove it from the oven and let it cool off. Here we see the layers. This pastry can be stored for a few days in an airtight container, free of moisture, to remain crunchy. Now we continue with the inverse puff pastry. This puff pastry is the most delicious, but also the most difficult to make. The procedure here is the opposite of the classic puff pastry. The butter wraps the dough. For the inverse puff pastry we need the dough hook, the flat beater. If we do it by hand, we will need a steel or plastic scraper, a roller pin, 2 1/10 dough thickness rails, a brush, 2 perforated trays, a set of thin magnets, a 10 by 15.5 inches envelope made with parchment paper, and a 6.5 by 9 inches envelope made with parchment paper. The larger envelope will contain the butter, the smallest the dough. The larger envelope should perfectly wrap the smaller one. For the dough we need 350 grams of flour, 150 grams of warm water, 115 grams of butter melted not hot, 15 grams of salt, 1 tablespoon of white vinegar. We place all the ingredients in the bowl and knead. Knead until you get a compact dough. You don't need to knead much. We place the dough in the small envelope. We spread it first with our hands. Then, with the help of the roller pin, refrigerate. For the butter block we need 375 grams of butter, 150 grams of flour. With the flat beater, we mix very well the butter with the flour. We place it in the large envelope and spread it perfectly until it covers the entire extension of the rectangle. Refrigerate with the dough at least for 1 hour. It's better if you let them rest overnight. Before starting burst puff pastry, we let the dough and the butter block rest out of the fridge for a few minutes. Both the dough and the butter block should have the same consistency. We place the dough in the middle of the butter block and then proceed to seal very well. Refrigerate this rectangle for about 20 minutes. Start rolling out the dough. We add enough flour on the table. Roll out quickly and evenly. We are going to make a first double fold. Brush the excess of flour. Make the borders even. Fold in half. Then each side to the center. And then both together. Wrap and refrigerate for at least 30 minutes. Now we proceed to make a second double fold. Roll out the dough as much as you can. Then make a double fold. Wrap and refrigerate. Now we make a third double fold. Now we make the last fold. This will be a simple one. We then carry out a simple turning. We wrap and refrigerate for at least 1 hour. Now we divide the dough in two. Here we can see some layers. Roll it out until getting a rectangle. Use the 1/10 dough thickness rails. Refrigerate for at least 1 hour. You can freeze it a little bit too. When it comes to baking, we do the same process as we did with the classic puff pastry. Place a sheet of parchment paper, place the rectangle. In each corner, we place about 3 magnets to control the height of the dough. Cover with another tray and place some weight on top. Bake at 380 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes or until golden brown. And here we have the inverse puff pastry, the favorite of pastry chefs. Without a doubt, the crunchiest and the one with more visible layers. We have seen the two most popular ways to make a very good puff pastry. Let's recap very quickly. For the classic puff pastry, we make a dough and a butter block. We place the butter in a parchment paper envelope. We refrigerate for at least 1 hour. Before we start rolling out, both the dough and the butter block must have the same consistency. We roll out the dough and wrap the butter block with it. We roll out and do the first simple fold. For each fold, we refrigerate about 30 minutes. In total, we make 4 single folds and 1 double. Bake at 380 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes or until golden brown. For the inverse puff pastry, we make a dough that we place in a small envelope of parchment paper. We make a butter block in a large envelope of parchment paper. We refrigerate for at least 30 minutes. We wrap the dough with the butter block. We make a first double fold. In total, there are 3 double folds and 1 simple. Bake at 380 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes or until golden brown. And now we'll see how to make a wonderful Napoleon and the classic Palmiers. With the leftovers that we got, cut them into strips, no matter the size or shape. Brush them with beaten egg and add the spices that you prefer. You could use some salt, oregano, pepper, or any other spice or herb that you prefer. You could use some cinnamon and sugar as well. For a spectacular Napoleon, we use some puff pastry rectangles. I prefer the inverse one. We make a diplomat vanilla cream, and we pipe it on each layer of puff pastry. Seal and place on one side on a plate. At the top, pipe some whipped cream. For the second version of Napoleon, we cut 3 rectangles of puff pastry. We place raspberries on the edge. Then we pipe a chocolate pastry cream. Then we decorate. To make these creams, please go to the creams tutorial. The link is up here and in the description of this video. For both versions of Napoleon, we use one recipe of inverse puff pastry. For the diplomat cream, we use the recipe with 250 grams of milk, and for the chocolate pastry cream, we use the recipe with 500 grams of milk. For the classic Palmiers, we roll out the rectangle of puff pastry on granulated sugar, and we apply sugar on the top too. We roll out until getting a long strip. Fold the strip in half. Then, each half is divided into thirds. Each half is folded twice, and then fold both halves. We tap a little and we freeze it. Cut the size of the palmier that you like the most and use the amount of sugar you prefer. Slide the dough about 1/3 inches. Soak in sugar and place on the trays with enough space between them. Take the tray to the oven and bake for about 20 minutes at 350 degrees. Then turn every palmier upside down. Bake for another 10 or 15 minutes. If you want, you could cover them in chocolate. You could use melted chocolate or this chocolate ganache. 250 grams of dark chocolate, 250 grams of heavy cream, 40 grams of soft butter. Heat the chocolate a little. Add the hot heavy cream. Mix well. Then when the mixture is at room temperature, add the butter. Cover the side of the palmier that looks less caramelized. You could sprinkle in some cocoa nibs or chocolate flakes. Let it solidify. And here we have some crunchy and delicious palmiers. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I encourage you to make some puff pastry at home. Remember, it's all about practicing. If you have any questions, please send me a message. Thanks for joining me and see you soon.